morning, class. Today we have come to the final topic of your course, which is about writing a research proposal or a research report. As you know, you have been learning about how to do research, why to do research, the different approaches in doing research, and the importance and application of each one. So after all that, and you have decided to actually do an academic research, you will have to come up with a research proposal. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, research proposal is actually a written document. Yeah, you have to write this down in a specific order in order to convince whoever is evaluating your proposal. Okay, so when we try to do a research proposal, the aim is to get some funding, and this funding is what we will use to pay for all the research expenses that will be incurred during the implementation of our research. Okay, so before the sponsor can give you the money, they will need to see how sound your proposal really is. So that's what you will need to do. You will have to convince them that you have a sound research proposal that takes into consideration all the relevant factors, so that they know that their funding will not go to waste. Okay. Who do we write this proposal for? Okay, when we seek funding for a research, normally this is a research that is sponsored by agencies such as the ministry or the private agencies that want us to work for them as a researcher. Okay, there are times also that you present your proposal not for the purpose of getting money, but for the purpose of education. This is when you do your master's or do your PhD. That's when you have to come up with a thesis proposal, and this has to be presented first of all in front of your committee and your supervisor, at the proposal level, so that they will evaluate and tell you whether you can proceed or not with the proposal that you have. Okay, so an academic supervisor is one of the person that we will write our proposal for. If you are already working in the industry and you need to do some research in order to understand a certain phenomena, such as the decline of number of customers you have, or the number of tourists you have in any particular year or particular given a period of time, then of course you will need to propose a research proposal to your work supervisor. Yeah, so that they will also be the relevant person that you have to present to, when you have a research proposal. You will also have to take into account the possibility of having to present in front of an ethics committee. An ethics committee is usually consists of a few people that will look how sound your research proposal is in terms of abiding to all the rules and regulations, the do's and don'ts of any particular research. For example, if you are doing a research related to minor, meaning related to children, they have to be protected, and so no one can simply do any research on them. So if a researcher wants to do something on child development or any related topic on that requires the involvement of children, then there will be an ethics committee that will have to sit down and evaluate your proposal to make sure that your proposal or your intended research would not harm the children in any particular way. This can also apply in the context of tourism and hospitality, because there is such a thing as sex tourism, also pedophilic type of tourism, yeah, where you will have to consider including children in the as part of the respondents of your research. So that's why an ethics committee is a group of people that you have to consider when you develop a proposal related to certain topics. Okay. You can also write a proposal for an agency, a government agency. If you are already at master level or PhD level, maybe you will be working with your supervisor, and the supervisor would have to seek funding for his or her research, and they will seek the funding from ministries such as Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Human Resource, all kinds of ministries that have funding for research. Okay, so you as the student who work with the supervisor will have to come up with a proposal that is worth presenting in front of that particular government agency. Okay. Sometimes you are working already and a client comes up to you for consultation, and in order to solve or help the client, you have to do research. So you also in this context have to propose a proposal for this particular client that you are consulting. Okay. Peer reviewers are also important group of audience for research proposal, because the peer reviewers would be, this is particularly in the context of a research output rather than research proposal. For example, you have completed your research and you are now developing an article that you want to publish. So what will happen is the editor will send your article to a few other academicians or people in the same industry as you to evaluate and help the editor make a decision of whether your research output is worth publishing or not. Okay, so these are some of the target audience that we have to consider when we are thinking about the writing up of our proposal or report. Going back to just the proposal, it essentially is a plan. Yeah, it's a plan to describe a proposed study. Okay, so you already know your topic. And based on that topic, you will have to come up with a suitable objective, practical objective, researchable objective, maybe more than one, maybe a maximum of 3 objectives, so that you can investigate each objective systematically. Okay, and you will also need to justify what the problem is for your research, because there must be a gap, as we know. Yeah, if we want to study something, there must be a research gap that we are trying to fulfill before we can say that yes, this is a good proposal and it is worth doing. Okay, so that's why you need to justify the problem, you need to justify the hypothesis, you need to present the steps you will take in your research methodology, yeah, how you will go about determining your sample, determining your field work, determining the duration of your field work and everything, yeah, and come up with a project schedule that is attractive to the funder as well as practical for you as the researcher. So the plan can be relatively brief, yeah, not not too long, because usually if it's too long-winded, then it can just confuse people, and they would, funders or people who are evaluating you, they don't like to be confused. Okay, so you need to be crisp, clear, and straight to the point about what you're trying to do. Okay, but still, whatever you're writing for your proposal, it has to follow the guidelines that is usually given to you on how you should prepare your proposal. So each of the steps or each of the requirement of that guideline has to be fulfilled, and so because if you don't, then your proposal become unattractive. Okay. And so you must, whenever we are writing a research proposal for any agencies or any body, you have to first of all find out what are their requirements. That's the most strategic, the most smart way to go about doing your research proposal, because otherwise you'll just be giving them just anything according to you rather than according to your audience. Okay, so that's why you have to make sure you give them what they want rather than what you want. Okay, because they are the ones who decide in the end whether to let you do your proposal, your research or not. Okay, so this plan must be comprehensive and just ready to go before you actually get the funding and start your research. This proposal is supposed to communicate your intention as a researcher and make clear the purpose of your study. Okay, remember I mentioned about research gap. That gap has to be very clear that it exists. Yeah, either in the literature or in the practical world, and that whatever you're trying to do through this proposal will help fulfill that gap or narrow that gap. Okay. So this communication has to be very clear, very easy to comprehend by the people who are judging you. And then in the next slide, you will understand more on why you need to write a research proposal. The purpose of a research proposal for you as a researcher is, first of all, it helps you establish that there is a niche for your chosen area of study. Niche relates to gap that I mentioned just now. So that means the research that you are proposing is actually crucial, is actually important, is actually providing some kind of solution or some kind of new knowledge to what we already know about something. Okay, and the proposal, the way that we design the proposal must tell the audience or the people who are evaluating that the research is feasible, it is practical, it is researchable. Yeah, because remember, you are playing with people's time and money, so you have to convince them that you will be able to finish within a designated time or within the designated budget. So that's why it has to be feasible. Okay, and the proposal has to pin down exactly what you plan to do, and it will determine whether your ideas are practical or achievable. Okay, so when you write, it's not only you have to explain to them the academic side of this proposal, but also you have to convince them in terms of the practicality of time and money that you will manage to get the research done. It will also make you think. Yeah, it will force you to think through every aspect of the study, because if you don't do this proposal, then the way you do your research may not be systematic. Okay, because you don't have a guideline, you don't have anything written down to guide you. Okay, what you have done already, what you should do, whether you have taken the right step or not, so that's why the proposal will guide you and make you think through every aspect of the research from A to Z. Okay, so and for the people who are judging or who are evaluating your work, your proposal, it will help them to systematically review and evaluate. Okay, so this piece of document is essentially to guide you in conducting the study and also to convince the reader about your capability to do it, your knowledge, your skill, your expertise to make sure that it is done. What should the proposal include? Good academic proposal, if it is quantitative, should have an objective well, actually, hypothesis. I mean, all type of research, either quantitative or qualitative, should have objectives, because the objective is the final guideline that will make sure you are doing what you intended to do. Okay, but if it is quantitative research, then you will also have to come up with a hypothesis. We have learned about what is a hypothesis, so you know what I'm talking about. The proposal should also have a brief account of prior research in the topic area, because remember, we have to give background, and this background usually refers to what has been done by past researchers in that area. Okay, the proposal should also detail out the design and the methods, yes, the time schedule, and also we'll have to have all the headings that you see here. Okay, there are plenty of examples of research proposals out there in the internet. I suggest that you go through it. In fact, the steps or the things that you have to present in that proposal is pretty standard, where you have to have an introduction, a literature review, description of the methodology, and the summary and the conclusion. Okay. So all proposals have to be prepared by the researcher. That is granted, because who else will prepare the proposal for you? Yeah. So it's self-generated, so that the funder will be impressed enough to fund your research. Yeah. So sometimes the academician will be assisted by his or her graduate students. As I mentioned before, this combination of supervisor and supervisor can come up with a very good proposal in the end that will be able to convince the funder that the research is worthwhile. Okay, so the supervisor and supervisor have to work together so that they can come up with a proposal that can benefit both the supervisor as an academician and the graduate student as a potential scholar, so that they can both do something related to the topic that is being proposed to the funder. Okay. So when you do something and then you ask the funder to give you money to do it, this is called self-generated proposal. But sometimes when people come to you and say, please do this research for us, this is called responsive research proposal. Okay, and these are usually what consultants do. Consultants will do a research based on what is being requested by their clients. Okay. And so, because it's a proposal, of course, it is something that is not yet done. So, a proposal is usually written in future tense. When we write a proposal, how much should you write will depend on, what needs to be done. There is no, standard size of page numbers or pages that you have to come up with in order to make it look like a good proposal, but the proposal has to be comprehensive enough to be explaining all that the researcher intend to do. Okay. Sometimes you do this proposal in a form. Yeah, you fill a form to fill in the summary, the executive summary, the introduction, the literature review, the methodology, and everything, but in a form that is prepared by the funder, by the potential sponsor. In any case, typically this form or whatever that the proposal is being prepared will have this particular section, which is introduction, literature review, methodology section, timeline, budget, reference section, and curriculum vitae or resume of the proposal or the academician. When you write the introduction, in any case, typically this form or whatever that the proposal is being prepared will have this particular section, which is introduction, literature review, methodology section, timeline, budget, reference section, and curriculum vitae or resume of the proposal or the academician. When you write the introduction, now there has to be a statement of problem. This is where you have to highlight the research gap or what it is the problem that your research can help address. Okay, you also have to have a statement of hypothesis, and you have to develop this based on what you already know in the past literature about the situation of that particular variables that you're looking at. Okay. The review of literature section should have previous researches related to the problem and relevant theories. Okay. The design, the methodology section should have the design, how you want to go about doing this research. Are you going to approach it quantitatively or qualitatively, or are you going to use mixed methodology? Who will be the subjects of your research? What will be the instrument that you use? You know, what procedures of data collection you will use? How would you analyze the data? Yeah. So all these have to be under research methodology. Then you must indicate throughout the proposal what is to be done, why it needs to be done, how is it to be done, yeah, when will it be done, what will it cost, and who will be involved. So the basic question will be what, why, how, when, what, and who, to what's there. Okay, but by having all these questions answered, make the proposal be very clear and easy to read, easy to understand by the funder or by the people evaluating it. How do we write a research proposal that works? The research question is very important. Yeah, you have to write. You yourself as a potential researcher has to be very clear about what question your research is trying to answer. Okay, so this is why again you have to look at the gap, the research gap. What are some of the problems there? What are the things that you need to find in order to answer those problems? Okay, so that's why you have to a good set of research questions. Okay, a good research proposal will narrow the focus, because let's face it, a proposal or any research cannot solve the world's problem. We are just trying to connect the dot or trying to raise new knowledge to just a little part of the entire big knowledge system. So that's why your research has to be focused, has to be narrow. Yeah. When you do your research question, these are the same words that you can use as keyword when you search for the literature that you will use in your literature review section. Okay, so it's the same word or related word. That's how it will make it easy for you to find more background or more idea of what has been done in the past by the past researchers on this topic. And then you also will have to have an idea how to operationalize all your variables. Operational definition is not just simple definition, but it's basically, as you have known, a more specific definition that will try to measure each of the variable that you are looking at. Yeah, it has to be measurable and observable. So when you have a good operational definition, then your work will be easier, because you will just follow this operational definition that you have developed. Okay, and of course the proposal would have to have a clear and suitable hypothesis that is based on past literature, not just a hypothesis that you cook up without any attempt to look at what has been done in the past by the literature, in the literature. Of course, the issue of plagiarism is very important to avoid, as I have mentioned again and again. So you must be able to come up with a proposal that is original. Yeah, original in terms of the writing, original in terms of the idea, original in terms of the gap that you're trying to address. Do not reinvent the wheel, they say. So that means your idea or the problem that you are addressing must be fresh problems, must be something that has not been addressed by anyone in the past. Yeah, this is an issue, especially for graduate students, because when you choose a topic and you are working on your thesis, you have to constantly make sure that what you're looking at is original in nature, because if someone else is doing the same thing that you are doing, then you are screwed, because when it comes the time for your viva, your external examiner can say, oh, someone else has already done this. This is not original work. And when your work is no longer original, then you cannot get your PhD or your master's degree. Okay, so that's why. The proposal should also have correct instrument to answer the question, and this instrument can be either quantitative or qualitative. Okay. Of course, the research proposal will also have to iron out issues, methodological issues such as what paradigms you use, how you select and assign your subject. Yeah. How do you make sure that the number of subjects is as per what you wanted? Yeah. So how do you check for attrition or dropout rate? How do you present your questionnaires? And also issues related to research ethics. Okay. Comes the section of how you will analyze your data. Okay, so you will have to specify how the data will be analyzed, because as you have already known, quantitative analysis is different from qualitative analysis. And also, when you are looking at mixed methodology, you have to consider both types of analysis and how you're going to arrange the presentation of each of the analysis in a way that is advantageous to you and your research. So you may need to get help from your supervisors, you may need to get help from from the literature itself, or from any of the professional agencies or editors that can help you with this. Okay. And the most common shortcoming of research proposal is if you try to solve too much, yeah, trying to do too big of a scope, yeah, because you know that research has to be practical and researchable. So if you try to do too much, it is not achievable. Yeah. So you always have to make sure that you have a focused focused research proposal. Objectives that is not clear and precise. This is very dangerous, because when your objectives are not clear, how can you do a good research? Yeah. So you have to make sure that you have a precise and clear set of objectives that you want to fulfill at the end of your research. Okay. Another thing that you have to consider when developing your proposal is whether you can or cannot access certain types of data or certain types of respondent. Okay, because again, research has to be practical and researchable. So if you cannot access the data, that means you cannot do the research. Okay. And of course, when you do an academic research, you have to always read past literature on that particular corner of knowledge that you're trying to research. You have to, because otherwise you will not know where to connect the dots. You will not know where is the gap of research. You will not know whether your research is new or just repeating someone else's research. Okay. So you have to be aware of existing research on that particular topic that you're looking at. When writing a research report, the report generally includes the problem that has been investigated, the proposals, the hypothesis that has been proposed earlier, the variables, all the definitions that you have proposed in your proposal earlier. Yeah, the report also have update the literature review section, so that you are constantly updated in terms of the knowledge that already exists in this area. This is very important, yeah, especially when you are a master's student or PhD student, because by the time you start your research report writing, it's already 3-4 years later than the year that you made your proposal. So a lot of change, a lot of knowledge has been generated, a lot of literature has been published since then. So you have to update your literature review. And also the report has to have a clear description of the design that is used, the procedures that is followed, and the justification for all the steps that you have taken. A research report communicate what was actually done in the study and what resulted. Okay, it concludes your research process. It tries to engage the peer review to be interested in what you have found. Yeah, it determines the authenticity of the quality of the work that you have done. Yeah, it validates also the work that you have done. So the research report has to determine or to show that the research is reliable and replicable. It will also enable the researcher to share the findings with the public. Yeah, with the public here means first of all, of course, your examiners. Second of all, the publishers, yeah, your peer reviewers. These are the public that are relevant to you, and you must convince them that you have done a good job. Okay, and you have to also explain how future researcher can benefit from what you have already found. Okay, and that's why when you do a research report, the implications of the research you have done section, this section, as well as the suggestion for future researchers section, are very important. it's very important for you to write clearly these two sections so that people can benefit from your work. Okay. So when you do the report, you will be stating what has been done, what has been found, and you have to also present a discussion on the findings that you have found. Okay, this is to like justify or align or support the findings that you have to make sure that they are findings that are useful for the community. A quantitative research report is presents mostly the statistical. Okay, the idea is to communicate and relay the empirical observations and the findings that you have. Okay, so it must include in a clear, precise, and concise manner every relevant aspect of the study so that other researchers can replicate your work. Okay, and you also have to have like a specific section of your report written clearly. Yeah, and it usually begins with a cover, a title page, an abstract, an introduction, followed by a literature review section, a methodology section, a results section, a discussion section, conclusions, and references and appendices. Okay, so when you write this your research report, if you look at any thesis report, for example, yeah, you will see how thick this thesis can be, yeah, because each section of the report has to be written meticulously and clearly. Okay, so that's why when I supervise my student in writing up their thesis, I always ask them to find a native speaker that can help them proofread, first of all, the thesis. Yeah, a native speaker means an English person or a person who are born speaking the English language. They will be able to relay the information of your research in a very precise and clear manner. Yeah, using the correct expressions and everything. So that's why when you try to find a proofreader, try to find one that is native speaker. Okay, otherwise, if you use a non-native speaker, there is a chance that they will also not be clear in presenting your work. So you don't want to take that chance, because when you proofread, you have to pay the proofreader, and you don't want to waste your money on a bad proofreader. Okay, so that's why the clarity of your language has to be there, and this can only happen if you have a good proofreader to assist you. Okay, a good report should also have a good abstract. An abstract is like a summary of the research that has been done, and this abstract has to be accurate in nature. It has to be self-contained. That means it has all the abbreviations and acronyms explained. Yeah, it has to be concise and specific. Okay, because you cannot write a very long abstract. Abstract has to be concise. Yeah, it has to be brief, comprehensive, and allows the reader to survey the content of the article quickly through the information that it provides. Okay. So an abstract is also a non-evaluative, meaning it does not really add to the comment on what is in the body of the manuscript. It is not very detailed. Okay, so it just gives what is, but the details the reader can only find in the actual report itself. Okay, so an abstract has to also be coherent and readable. Coherent means from A to Z it is talking about the same thing. It is coherent. It does not confuse people who are reading it. Okay. Normally an abstract will include these things: the problem under investigation, the participants, the method, yeah, how you collect your data, how you did your measure, the findings, and the conclusion and implication. Remember, this is a very concise statement of the entire report that you have done. So of course you have to be very clear, but at the same time very concise, yeah, very short, in making sure that the abstract is a good abstract. And to make a good abstract, the length must be based on the guidelines again of wherever you're trying to publish this work in. If it is just your report, then you have to follow your university's guideline. If it is an article, you have to follow the journal guideline. If you're publishing it as a book, then that's a different guideline. Okay, so the abstract, you have to, again, just like when we try to prepare our proposal, you have to find out what is required in writing an abstract for that particular purpose. Okay. And when we do the abstract, we only provide the most important information. We don't give the nitty-gritty details. Just highlight the main point, and that's that. Okay. At the end of the day, what you have to remember is an abstract is a concise summary of your entire work. So it has to be short but descriptive of what you have done. Okay, so that's all for this. Thank you very much.